What is spirituality? Welcome, my name is Serapis Light, and in this video I want to talk about spirituality, what it truly is, what it definitely is not, and simply a definition of it. At the same time, I want to convey the point of how significant spirituality is to everything and everyone in existence. First of all, spirituality itself obviously has been very influenced by what has been called the New Age movement since, I don't know, I'd say probably in 1968, 70s, it started becoming more and more recognized and more prevalent also in literature, although I would say not, it wasn't until the mid 80s to 90s that it really became a movement that was recognized on a larger scale and more obvious in the public eye. Due to that, and of course due to religion and human history, the idea of spirituality is very clouded and usually very inverted, that is to say, very wrong. And I say that because having lived in many different places around the planet, including in the last 6-7 years in different spiritual communities or where spiritual communities gather, such as Bali, Indonesia, Kopangan, Thailand, Rishikesh, India, Tulum, Mexico, to name a few. Spirituality has really by many been turned into a trend propagated through social media. Now, for those who are older and who found their way towards spirituality through yoga, let it be known that yoga itself is still adhering to certain religious dogma. The very nature of yoga is very rooted in a religion that was previously known as, or currently known, was previously established after the Vedas, after the time of the Vedic Empire, which now constitutes modern day India, and more than that, it also, so to speak, emanated to what we now know as Thailand, Myanmar, Bangladesh, in parts Pakistan, and more. Spirituality, to give you a very simple definition of it, is about responsibility. It is about finding divinity within. That is really the most essential, quintessential way, an elemental way to describe spirituality. If you think about responsibility in your life, and as soon as you start finding ways to abdicate responsibility and to blame others, you are giving your power away, you are giving your authority away. Going through life saying God this and God that, or whatever deity of your choice, Allah, Ganesha, I don't know, whatever. To this day, to people, Hollywood celebrities, money, politicians are also forms of deities, and there's a deification going on of people simply because humans externalize God. They don't see it within. They actually do everything they can to not see it within, because they don't feel that they're worthy and they don't have access to their soul. And everyone who adheres to a religion is actively, on a daily basis, externalizing divinity, thereby creating a false image of their own soul in the perceived outer world. There truly is no outer world. Everything you perceive is your world. So much for science and the objectivity of it. There's no objectivity to anything. Everything is your subjective experience. That's what you're here for. You incarnated here as an individual being to exist here for the reasons that you have. That's something only you know, only your soul knows why you came here, why you chose the body that you have, the nationality, the language, the gender, and so on and so forth. Those are things unique to you. And so spirituality is responsibility. Think about it this way: whatever happens in your life, you are the god, or if you're a woman, you're the goddess of your creation. You're the god, the divine entity in your existence that decides what is what, which is which, how to feel about certain things, how to think about certain things, how to create, basically. And so that is why I say spirituality is responsibility, because you can no longer blame it on God when you are God. Well, you can only blame it on yourself then. But then you also quickly come to realize that blaming yourself does not get you anywhere. There is value in putting responsibility in your hands and realizing the mistakes you make. Mistakes in the sense that what you do is not helping you, what you do is not conducive to where you want to go, who you want to be, what you want to be. So blame yourself, but don't blame yourself. Simply be responsible. Be as responsible as you can at all times. And when you do that, you will also very quickly realize what is your responsibility and what is not your responsibility. You will very quickly realize that other people are very, very intent and apt to blame others so that they can feel less guilt. That has been proven throughout history, has been proven in recent years, is proven on a daily basis if you pay attention, but has been proven most recently, most obviously, on a global scale in a way that it never happened before through what has been known as coronavirus, which really was a spiritual activation of the crown, hence the name Corona, which means crown, Corona in Spanish, in Italian, in Latin originally, and I don't know how many other languages, probably in Greek as well. So that is to say, when you choose to be truly responsible for your life, you might not necessarily call that spirituality, but you're already moving towards spirituality. See, for myself, without going into too much depth in this video about myself, because there's other videos for that, I did not consider myself spiritual at all until 2017 to 2018. So one might say this is very recent. 10 years ago, if you would have asked me about spirituality, I would have said people doing yoga, a lot of people taking way too many substances, plant-based or not, and living in their fairy tale world and modern day hippies, and that's not me. That would have been my honest answer back then, with a decent amount of judgment. That judgment was based on an intuitive knowing, or that what a lot of people do who call themselves spiritual are not doing anything with integrity. And that is something that I have since learned from personal experience in so many ways, trying to work with people who call themselves completely dedicated to their spirituality and so on and so forth. And they're still very much stuck in their ego. They're still completely engulfed and driven by their traumatic and karma-based pursuits, which means they have not healed, which means they have not truly become conscious, which means in the concept that I've established, they are very far away from 5D. They're very far away from an open heart. They're very far away from even being open-minded, which is a mid-frequency of the fourth dimension. You first have to have an open mind before you can have an open heart, based on ascension as it works on the planet. I'm going to talk about ascension in the next video, what ascension is, where we are in our ascension, and so on. But spirituality is ultimately you reclaiming your truth, your soul, your divinity, and saying, I have power. I have power to make choices in my life. That doesn't mean you get to control things at all times. That is a perversion of power. Controlling circumstances out of fear is still the same. It's tyranny. That is tyranny. Adding to something that a lot of people, like Jordan Peterson, have talked about more recently. Tyranny is derived from fear-based control. Once you learn to master your consciousness and your being and your reality, you start to control from love. And that will not really feel like control, but it is still, you will feel immense power in the palm of your hands because it comes from your heart, because you are allowing things to be, you're allowing yourself to be. There's nothing more powerful coming from a human perspective than to truly embody love, which is to say, I allow myself to be who I am. The vast majority of humanity is very busy suppressing who they are, trying to fit into a very sick construct, a sick society. We can also call this the Matrix to make it a bit more sensational, but no less accurate and truthful. The first Matrix movie really was an absolute masterpiece that had a lot of divine guidance in it to awaken humanity. What you see there was not just the stroke of genius of the directors and the actors. There's a lot of important movies and movies with great impact, or books or otherwise, that had a lot of channeled energy in it. Channeled meaning from a greater consciousness, influenced by a greater consciousness. And so I want to end this video by saying, or conclude it rather than ending it, because you can't really end the conversation on spirituality, because everything in existence is spiritual. Everything is derived from source, even when that is completely inverted. Fear itself is an inversion of who we truly are. It is turned upside down. It is the false positive, the negative, the false positive, the negative of truth. Lies, a lie in itself is an admission of the truth. Fear itself is an admission of love. Darkness itself is an admission of light. This is something you truly start to understand when you awaken to a consciousness that starts to really move out of duality and becomes much more polarized, and therefore consciously integrated into the nature of this and this exists on the same spectrum, and they are directly mirroring each other. Whereas in duality, just like in the Cold War, specifically in Germany, there was a wall. East and West, communism, capitalism, good, bad. And whichever side you're on, you see good here and bad there, and vice versa. That is a very, very simplistic and at this point incredibly dumb, speaking from a 2025 perspective, worldview, because we haven't lived in that frequency in a very long time, namely since the 80s. So there's many people who never consider themselves spiritual, just like I said myself, until one could say rather recently, in the grand scheme of things. When you choose to live a life of virtue, of compassion, of morality, of an ethical codex, a moral compass, you choose to do good, you do your best every day to make yourself better so that you can be better, that you can be helpful and useful to the people that you care about and to the planet at large, be that to plants, to animals, to humans, life in general. That is it's actually the most spiritual thing you can do. It doesn't mean that you consider it as spiritual, because to the point that I made at the beginning of this video, if you don't sit like this and you do yoga every day, you're not spiritual. If you don't have all the incense burning and the crystals and so on. that in itself is not spiritual. It can be, but so can driving a car, so can exercising, so can making love, so everything is spiritual if you do it consciously, if you do it from your heart with an open mind, with good intentions. Everything becomes spiritual. And so what I have witnessed is that the so-called spiritual community, they've done the same thing that humans always have done, which is to be exclusive and to exclude themselves by means of considering themselves superior to others. And there's many different forms of that, be that yoga, be that veganism, be that, I don't know, a simple statement and belief system rooted in I am better than others. Then you get together with other people who believe the same thing. Then you can construe and create a community out of that, and you distinctly say, "Oh, we are better than those people." Being more conscious makes you a better person. Absolutely, makes you better than you were before. It also makes you better than other people. However, how you deal with that, there is being more intelligent, there's being better looking, there is being better at engineering, at whatever it is that you do or that you are. You can use that in its most simplistic form in exactly two ways. One is to subjugate others, to exert power, tyrannical power over them, and to make them feel less than you intentionally, continuously. Or you choose option number two, which is to uplift others, which is to bring your gifts, whatever those are, to the world to make it a better place. And this is a choice you have to make every single day. And you will find yourself tested when you feel rejected, you feel unloved, you feel unappreciated, you feel you are directly insulted, you feel offended. You will find yourself in situations where you might feel inclined to choose option number one, which is to put others down. Sometimes in this world that we still live in, planet Earth at large, that is still sometimes a necessity, because you will find yourself in situations where you have to defend yourself in order to not take on someone. If someone wants you to believe that you are worthless, are you just going to take that on board and say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, you're right? Well, unless you feel already guilty enough to believe that, then obviously you have shadow work to do, you have trauma healing to do. But in general, as a conscious being becoming more conscious, as a somewhat awakened being, you don't want anything to do with that. Because when you are conscious enough, you surround yourself with people who are mirroring an ascension journey to you, who are mirroring consciousness back to you, which is to talk about problems in a much more loving and compassionate way. The last thing you need, especially on Earth, is being on a human ascension path and being dragged down, because there are many who will drag you down. There were many who try to drag you down, like the example, how do they say, crabs in the bucket, I believe, which is you don't get to rise above. You don't get to be better, which is also the human ego in its absolute core form. The human ego is always afraid. The human ego is always concerned with survival. Once you learn how to live, you will never think about survival again. You will experience hardship, you will experience challenges, depending on what your soul wants for you to learn to varying degrees. I've had an incredible amount of challenges, which you can learn more about here on this channel, mainly, and my website, of course, but I guess I wrote my story, which has over 20,000 words now on my website, but it's still different to talk about it in a video format, obviously. So to conclude this video, I don't know where we're at, 15, 20 minutes, doesn't really matter. To conclude this video, what is spirituality? It is compassion. It's making the choice for compassion. It's making the choice for more intelligence, educating yourself more, if your education is based on what the system gives you these days, and by that I mean typical school, typical university, well, I don't know what to tell you. That is propaganda. And 99% of that you will never need. Actually, it will directly hinder you from doing what you're here to do. So that goes hand in hand with awakening. Then again, if you've gone through that system and you've awakened, then you know that, and then you can put it to good use to help others who are thinking of going to that system, or who are in that system, or who were in that system, to transition out of it and to use their gifts and whatever those are, being a lawyer, being an artist, being whatever, in a way that is productive, in a way that is conducive to a higher frequency, to a better society, to what I would call 5D living. Ideally, 5D living meaning living from the heart and living in peace and living in love, which might sound like the hippies, but the hippies had a point. They had a great point. There's a reason that at the time, marijuana and LSD and other substances of various sources and potency were banned. It's a threat to society. Well, it's a threat to a sick society, that's for sure. And I'm not condoning to, smoke weed every day. That's not good for you either. And I've seen a lot of people do that because they have not found more reasonable and healthier ways to deal with their trauma and their hardships, or rather than hardships, their problems, really. But being open-minded and being open-hearted is the only way to be, because everything else will make you sick. And the last years have shown that, and it's showing more obviously every day. There's a very clear divide in society at large, meaning humanity. I'm not talking about a specific country, I'm talking about humanity in general. And you choosing spirituality in whatever way you do that. I've met people who would never consider themselves spiritual, would never use the word, but who were incredibly living an incredibly virtuous and meaningful life because they made the right choices. That is spiritual in essence. Understanding that, awakening to that, realizing that on the spectrum of awakening and growing more conscious through ascension, that you are God, is of course a different level of consciousness. But to make my point, spirituality, as in true spirituality, is very new to humanity. It's very new, especially considering where we come from, which is namely millennia and a very, very, very long time of dark ages, unconsciousness, religion, prosecution, rape, murder, violence, torture, everything that happened since Atlantis, in my words. Everything that happened since Atlantis, which was a 5-dimensional frequency and consciousness, which is why humanity at large doesn't have access to it, and most humans don't believe that it ever existed, because they cannot perceive it. They don't have access to it because it's that long ago, and we've experienced so much darkness here, so many unpleasantries, to say the least. So I'm really going to conclude this video now. I could keep talking. I hope you found this useful. If you did, then please subscribe to this channel, like this video, check out my website, which I'm going to link to in the description, because at this moment I cannot do any links in the video, I believe, until my channel is a bit bigger on YouTube. And yeah, on my website there's many more resources, free meditations and so on. So if you're interested in that, then please do check that out. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in one of my next and other videos. My name is Serapis Light, and I wish you all the best.